Greetings, this is Amy Wentley with Chai Knuckles Knitting, and this is episode 2021-8, Zahavi Tubular Bind Off. So I'm teaching a class on the Zahavi pullover by Emily Greene, which is distributed by Brooklyn Tweed. I'm doing that online, and I have gotten to the point now where I have finished a sleeve and I want to bind off. The suggested bind off in the pattern is a tubular bind off, and it's actually Kitchener stitch, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. You're going to need some tools for this. I've got two circular needles, 16-inch, and these are smaller than the project needle. So my project needle was a US 4. I think one of these is a 2 and one of these is a 1. Just as a piece of information for you, it doesn't matter which size needle is holding stitches. The needle that makes the stitch the size that it needs to be is your right hand needle, not the one holding the stitches, but the one making new stitches. So you can have smaller needles, and I actually recommend that for holding the stitches because it's easier to pick up the stitches, get them on the needle, kind of maneuver them with a smaller needle. So I have, I think, maybe a size 2 and a size 1, 16-inch circular needles. I have a darning needle. I have a DPN needle, which I don't think I'm going to need, so we'll just set that aside. And I also have a pair of scissors. So let's get started. So here's the sweater. Here's the sleeve. And my stitches are still on the sleeve on the DPNs at the end of the sleeve. And I just finished. I tried the sweater on, sleeve's the right length, everything's lovely. So the first thing I want to do is I had some yarn left over here. This is my working yarn and my ball of yarn, what's left of it. I want to cut the yarn, and I am going to do, just for the heck of it, I've got 50 stitches on my needles. I'm going to wrap 50 times around this size 4 DPN to estimate how much I need. That's 32. Everything's tangled. 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. Okay, so that's 50 times, and that's going to be way more than enough. But I just wanted to make sure I had enough yarn left here to be able to perform the Kitchener stitch I need to do. So I'm going to put my yarn to the side, my ball to the side, and I'm going to go ahead and start. So the first thing you need to do is you've got these two circular needles, and you are going to have to separate the knit stitches and the purl stitches that are on your work here on the sleeve onto two separate needles. So all the knit stitches are going to go on one needle and all the purl stitches are going to go on another needle. What I do is I take the two different tips of the needles. So look, these are my needles together. They're parallel. I'm going to hold these two separate tips in my right hand. One is going to be for purl stitches, one is going to be for knit stitches. So I'm going to orient this so I'm at the beginning of my work. Give me 1 second. I want to change the light here just a little bit. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so I'm going to have my two needles lined up parallel to one another, and I'm going to start taking stitches off my needle. So here we are. This is my working yarn. This is the next stitch on the needle. So I have my two needles in my right hand and my stitches in my left hand. And I'm going to alternate between these two tips here, putting a knit stitch on one and a purl stitch on the other. So I'm going to start with the front needle, and I'm going to put a knit stitch on that and let it slip off. And then I'm going to go back to the back needle and put a purl, front needle and put a knit, back needle and put the purl, front needle, knit, needle, purl. Whoops, that slipped off a little bit. Be careful that you don't drop any. Front needle, knit, back needle, purl, front needle, knit, back needle, purl, just like this. And I'm going to keep doing this and doing this until I get all the stitches on these two needles. The knit stitches on the front, the purl stitches on the back. So there you go. See how that works? So I am going to pause the video for one moment. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get all the rest of these stitches around the end of my sleeve onto these two needles, and I will be back and I will show you how to do the bind off. Hi, I'm back. So I now have all my stitches on two separate needles. I've got my knit stitches on the front needle and my purl stitches on the back needle. Okay. Actually, any way you turn it, that's going to be true. Okay. And so now I'm going to start the Kitchener stitch. One thing I do recommend is that you count your stitches on your needle and make sure when you start that you have the same number of stitches on both needles. That's going to be important to make sure that you do this correctly. So in order to work the Kitchener stitch, you've cut your yarn. You're going to have to thread your yarn onto a darning needle. And I've got a big one here so that you can see it real well. And you can use this darning needle to go ahead and do the rest of the tubular bind off, which is actually at this point the Kitchener stitch. So the instructions for the Kitchener stitch are in the steps that you need to take are in the pattern in the special techniques session. I also have them pasted here in the description on the YouTube video and on my blog. So first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your darning needle. It doesn't matter really if the yarn is coming off the front needle or the back needle. Either way, you're going to be fine. I'm going to put my darning needle through the stitch on the front needle as if to purl, and I'm going to pull it through. And I'm going to go ahead and try to get the camera a little bit closer so you might be able to see this a little bit better. Okay, so I put it through the first stitch on these are the knit stitches on the front needle, and these are the purl stitches on the back needle. So I put it through the first stitch on the front needle as if to purl, pulled the yarn all the way through, and I'm leaving that stitch there. Now I always take my needle under these two needles, and I'm going to enter the first purl stitch on the back needle as if to knit. So I bring it around and put it in as if to knit, and I'm going to pull the yarn through, and I'm going to leave this stitch on the needle. Now as I pull the yarn through, watch how the yarn is staying under these two needles. You don't want the yarn to come up over on top of the needles like that. Okay, so keep it under the needle and you pull it through. Now the rest of this is going to be a series of 4 steps that you're going to repeat over and over again. I suggest that you do this in a quiet place with no interruptions. Keep your husband and cats far away. You're going to need to concentrate. So each one of these is a series of 4 steps. You're going to process the first stitch on the front needle, then the second stitch. Then you're going to go back to the first stitch on the back needle and the second stitch. That's your 4 steps. And you will repeat those over and over again. So to start with, I'm going to put my needle in the first stitch. I'm going to put my darning needle in the first stitch on the front of these 2 needles as if to knit. I'm going to pull the yarn through, always keeping my yarn under those 2 needles. And I am going to drop the first stitch off the front needle. And that's the first one processed. Then I'm going to go to the second stitch on the front needle, and I'm going to enter my needle as if to purl, pull it through, and leave it on the needle. Now I'm going to go to the back needle, back here, first stitch on the back needle. I'm going to enter as if to purl, and notice how my yarn is staying under the 2 needles. And I'm going to let that stitch drop off the back needle, and then I tug a little bit between each of these things. And then, not real hard, but just a little bit. And then I'm going to insert my needle as if to knit the second stitch on the back needle. I'm going to pull it through, and see how this yarn stayed under the needles and between the needles. And I'm going to tug it a little bit, and that stitch is going to stay. So the way the cadence goes is insert as if to knit, drop off, as if to purl, keep on, as if to purl, drop off, as if to knit, keep on. Knit, off, purl, off, knit, on. The ones that fall off are the same action. So in the first stitch here on the front needle, this is a knit stitch. I am going to knit it and drop it off the needle. When I get to the back needle, the first stitch is a purl stitch. I'm going to purl it and drop it off the needle. And then the next one stays. So we'll go ahead and do this a few more times for you. So front needle as if to knit, knit like that. Pull it through and under those 2 needles. And you're going to drop this one off. It's as if to knit and drop. The next one is as if to purl and keep on, except now see how that yarn, oh, it didn't get wrapped around. That's fine. Don't let the yarn get wrapped around the needles. So this is purl and stay on. Then I'm going to go to the back needle, and I am going to purl and drop off, and then I'm going to knit and keep on. And make sure that your yarn does not wrap around those needles, and tug a little bit. So I'm going to do just a few more for you. Okay, knit, front stitch, take off, purl, keep on, and we move to the back, and we purl and keep on, purl and take off, and then we knit, knit, and keep on. And don't make knots. Be very careful. The yarn has to go under. There we go. Okay. So I am going to go ahead and I am going to finish doing this tubular bind off the Kitchener until I get to the last few stitches over here, and I'll show you how to finish. So I'm going to pause again for just a little bit, and I'll be right back. Hello, I'm back. So I've worked my way all the way around the cuff of the sleeve here, and you'll see how pretty this bind off is looking, and it's stretchy too. It's a beautiful little rounded edge. And so I am at the point now where I have my my stitches came out. So watch as I pick up the stitches I just dropped. Okay, so I have got my, let's just double check. I've got my, where am I? Oops, that's going the wrong way. Both needles need to go in the same direction. So there you go. Woo! Okay, so that was fun. Let's not do that again. Okay, so I'm down now to my, where am I? Okay, I am down now to my last 3 stitches on the needle. And where am I exactly? Okay, so I just put my needle in as if to knit, and I kept it on the back. Okay, this is where I started actually, this little nubby here. Goes all the way around and I'm ending here. I've got 3 stitches left on my needle, and I'm going to go ahead and just keep doing what I've been doing so you get to see this one more time. Insert as if to knit on the front needle and let that drop off. Insert as if to purl on the front needle and leave that on. I also do want to mention at this point, as you get to the end, after you do a back needle, count your stitches and make sure they're the same on the front and the back needle. If they are not the same, and you counted before you started, if they're not the same, then you may have dropped a stitch somewhere along the way and you need to go back and check on that. You might need to rip it out and start again if that's the case. And so now I'm on my back needle and this stitch got oriented incorrectly when I picked it up. So I'm going to purl the first stitch on the back needle and drop it off, and knit the first stitch on the back needle, the second stitch on the back needle, and leave it. Okay, so now I've got 2 stitches on both. I'm just going to come do it one more time. Front needle as if to knit and drop off. Front needle as if to purl, leave on. Back needle as if to purl, drop off. Back needle as if to knit, leave on. So now you've got 2 stitches left on your needle. What you're going to do here is you're going to go to the front needle as if to knit and drop off. So you're doing the drop off part. And you're going to go to the back needle and insert it as purl and drop off. And you're done. So now you've got kind of a wonky end here, as you'll see, because you were stretching it a little bit and everything. What you need to do is join the end here to the front here. And so I'm just going to put my needle through kind of that little purl bump at the beginning here. Pull it through and see how it's just going to close it up tight. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my cuff inside out, and I'm going to pull this tight to get rid of that gap, and then I'm just going to do a quick little whip stitch on the back here. I'm going to go into one side and I'm going to go into the other because I just want to close up that hole. I'm going to pull it, and then I'm just going to go ahead and take my darning needle through a few loops of a rib here. I'm going up each loop just along the edge. See how I'm working on that loop there, that edge. I'm going to do that through about 5 or 6 times. Then I'm going to cut my yarn close, and then that is my finished sleeve. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, look, it can talk too. Hello, hello. Anyway, thank you for joining me for this video today. That's the Kitchener Stitch Tubular Bind Off for the Zahavi Sweater. The next video I'm going to do is going to be on picking up stitches for the collar. I have also done a bunch of other videos. So if you go to my blog, ChiKnucklesKnitting.com, if you click on the project tab and go to Zahavi, you can see how to do seams, how to pick up other stitches, hints and tips, that sort of thing. So please check those out, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.